This is the new screen for the revised Tesla Model 3. Come and have a look at it. So the dimensions are the same, but you have less bezel. Also, the screen is brighter and it's more responsive. Look at the way that zips about. Very, very responsive actually. Over here, I have the old screen. Now have a look at this. So if you come here, you can see that it's not quite as responsive. Can you see it's lagging behind my finger, right? The graphics aren't quite as sharp either. Look, can you see it just lagging slightly behind my finger? Let's go back to the new screen and do that again. So, ready? Look at that. It's totally with my finger. That's impressive.
Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patrons, Doug S, Tri Medea, James S, and James D. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. The contracts between the UAW and the Big Three expire tonight, and so far, still no deal. It looks like the latest offers from the Big Three are roughly half of what the UAW was asking for originally. There are, of course, other factors being negotiated, but it sounds like the UAW will strike certain Detroit 3 plants starting early Friday if nothing happens today. The union would begin announcing the first plants to be targeted by strikes at 10 p.m. tonight. And Auto News is saying the UAW has never struck against all three automakers simultaneously. Farley said that Ford put forth 4 increasingly generous offers on the table since August 29th, and they've yet to receive any genuine counteroffer. We don't understand why we can't get feedback to make this deal to forge the future. How can you negotiate if you don't get a well-considered genuine counteroffer? Just this afternoon, GM upped its price hike to 20% from 18% before, and Mary Barra said, "Remember, we had a strike in 2019 and nobody won." The UAW organizing director has said a full walkout is still on the table. The Biden administration officials are preparing economic measures to protect auto suppliers that could be impacted, including through government loans. These discussions for protection for suppliers have been ongoing for a while, but they are premature and fluid. If hourly employees at Ford do go on strike, they would take home nearly 60% less on average with the UAW strike pay than they would from working, and without vehicles in production, their profit-sharing checks that they'd be set to get early next year would of course be much less. There are varying degrees to which these strikes could actually take place, but a full strike would hit earnings at each affected automaker by about $400 to $500 million per week, assuming all production was lost. So by the time you see this video, we're going to be very close to the deadline. Should be a pretty interesting 24 hours. Russ Mitchell got to go on a ride along with Jim Farley, and of course they talked a lot about electric vehicles, and we got some comments from Farley on the Cybertruck. Farley does not see the Cybertruck as a direct competitor for Ford. He said, "I think the Cybertruck will be very attractive to a specific group of people. If it expands the aperture of what a pickup truck should look like, that's all good, especially as aerodynamics become more important to expanding EV range. I mean, I want people to look at pickup trucks and go, oh, they don't have to look just like what I'm used to." He added, "This is not an EV revolution. This is a digital shift to a digital product. Every car company is trying to figure out how to profit as dashboards turn into iPhones on wheels and what kind of subscriptions they can sell. That's not just new revenue, but carries far higher profit margins than vehicles alone." Farley thinks most car makers are going about it the wrong way, putting too much emphasis on selling what comes with smartphones already. Companies are like, we're taking Apple out of the interiors and they're going to charge a fee. That doesn't make sense. They're going to charge you extra for what you're already paying Apple or what you're paying for the Los Angeles Times. I don't think we have the right to charge unless the data is coming off the vehicle itself. And of course, that I respect. And he did say that Ford claims 450,000 subscribers to its new Ford Pro productivity software. And they said in model year 2025, Ford plans to introduce a totally revamped EV platform, including over-the-air instant software updates on par or exceeding Tesla's. Let's slow down with that latter one. I have to be honest though, I have some fairly high expectations for Ford's next generation of EVs. Remember the talent on the software and hardware side that they now have. Doug Field, who worked at Apple and worked at Tesla on the Model 3. Farley said his name came up again and again. Doug's been a super catalyst in our company. They also have Alan Clark, a 12-year Tesla veteran, and another Apple exec, Peter Stern, who oversaw things like Apple TV Plus and iCloud. Speaking of the Cybertruck, James Douma said people who try to key a Cybertruck will be ruining their keys. That's pretty good. To which Elon said we might be able to offer an optional tungsten carbide coating, which is basically scratch proof to everything below diamond hardness. I think we can all agree there are plenty of bad actors lurking on the internet, people that want to spy on our whereabouts and learn our tendencies. The truth is, I think if more of us knew what was really going on, we would at the very least be more outraged, and most likely we'd be a lot more proactive in combating these nefarious actors. A while back, I decided I was going to do what I can to protect myself and my family, so to support Matt Farrell, I actually checked out Surfshark, one, because it was very reputable, and two, it was affordable. A few years later, and I'm really glad that I did. Surfshark does more than most people think when they think of a VPN. For you world travelers, it gives you access to the internet in places that block or censor it, while guaranteeing your privacy no matter where you're at in the world. If certain content is blocked in whatever region you're in, Surfshark can unblock it for you, and you can also take advantage of region-specific pricing when you're browsing for things like flights and hotels. The user interface is simple and incredibly easy to use. Anybody can do it. One click and your personal data and your online activity become private. A very underrated feature, you can have one Surfshark account for an unlimited number of devices so your whole family can be protected. So if you want to remove yourself from the black market of companies tracking and selling your personal data in online activity, Surfshark is a must. And if you go to surfshark.deal/electrified and use my promo code Electrified, you'll get 3 months for free. The link is below. Here's the situation. We have the Kilowatts having a recent phone call with a Tesla sales rep. Tesla, do you still want the new Model 3? The Kilowatts, yes, but only the refresh. Tesla, unfortunately, the refresh deliveries start 2024. Are you interested in anything else? He said, Cybertruck. Tesla, deliveries should be starting in a few days. However, before we go pumping up our tents to get in line, Tesla came back to clarify. Apparently, the representative misspoke, and both Model 3 refresh and Cybertruck delivery timelines were based on speculation and are not to be treated as official Tesla statements. But it seems like something that a sales rep would not just make up totally out of thin air. Usually where there's smoke, there's a fire. They just don't want us to know it yet. And in this text conversation, the Kilowatt said Cybertruck deliveries will be starting in small numbers within a few days. And they said, yes, Cybertruck deliveries start any day now. But then they came back and said that was inaccurate information. They don't have anything on the Model 3 Plus or Cybertruck, so disregard the earlier chat. So look, I know a ton of people are getting super excited about this one, but I just have to say, remember, we still haven't had the Cybertruck event, and I'm imagining there's going to be at least a little bit of timeline so people can plan their flights and do things like that. So I could certainly be wrong here, but I'm still not expecting Cybertruck deliveries until sometime in October at the earliest. Hopefully you remember yesterday we talked about the EU, how they're essentially trying to stop the Chinese competition from coming into their market, and Europe did say they'll do whatever it takes to keep its competitive edge. If history is our guide, I will not be surprised if we see a Dieselgate 2.0 type of scenario. But as I said yesterday, less than 24 hours later, China is already pushing back, saying if the EU goes through with this, it'll have a negative impact on economic and trade ties. China believes the investigative measures proposed by the EU are in reality to protect its own industry in the name of fair competition. It's a naked protectionist act that will seriously disrupt and distort the global auto industry and supply chain, including the EU, and will have a negative impact on China-EU economic and trade relations. And I didn't say it yesterday, but let's not forget the EU is also offering EV subsidies in many different forms, maybe not to the volume of China, but all global economies right now are offering some level of EV subsidies. And from everything we can see, it really does seem like China has most of the leverage leverage in this scenario. This Tesla supercharger at a Sheetz location was opened in Philadelphia last month, but I wanted to ask you guys, would you prefer more of this type of layout where you have the pull-through design as opposed to the ones like a regular parking spot? This would of course make the situation better for trailers, but for regular Tesla vehicles without that, what would you guys prefer? Esther is now reporting that the 4th V4 supercharger location is going up in France. Now across Europe, countries with V4 locations, the UK, Austria, the Netherlands, and Germany. Just wanted to pass along this anecdote from TeslaScope. They're seeing dozens of reports on X of newly delivered vehicles with hardware 4 receiving FSD Beta 11.4.4 on software branch .32.4. For a while, hardware 4 vehicles were not getting FSD Beta, but now many people, including Chris from Dirty Tesla, are doing FSD drives with hardware 4. This is one admittedly I need some time to look into, but from Interesting Engineering, they're saying the world's largest lithium deposit has just been discovered inside an extinct volcano in the United States, along the border of Nevada and Oregon, potentially containing up to 120 million tons of lithium. For context, the world output in 2022 was 737,000 tons of LCE, lithium carbonate equivalent. When it comes to individual mines, one of the biggest ones in the world in Western Australia has a current production capacity of 1.34 million tons per year. Of course, your production capacity is not what you actually produce every year, but looking at the top 6 countries with the largest lithium reserves in the world, Bolivia was at number 1 with 21 million tons and Argentina number 2 at 17 million. So I think you get the picture. If there really are 120 million tons in the United States, that's a major deal. This volcanic crater is called the McDermott Caldera. A geologist said if you believe their back of the envelope estimation, this is a very significant deposit of lithium. It could change the dynamics of lithium globally in terms of price, security of supply, and geopolitics. If they can extract the lithium in a very low energy intensive way or in a process that does not consume much acid, then this can be economically very significant. The US would have its own supply of lithium and industries would be less scared about supply shortages. It's almost like this is all just meant to be, but look at this, a blog post from Tesla on their lithium refinery groundbreaking, where they say, this 1,200 plus acre site will be the location of the first industrial deployment of an acid-free lithium refining route. This process eliminates the use of hazardous reagents and byproducts in favor of more inert options. So again, I need some time to look into this to learn more, but of course, if the United States were to have this massive reserve of lithium that Tesla can be a world leader in extracting from and then refining in the United States, over the long term, this could really alter the dynamics of the supply chain imbalances that we have right now. Along those lines, Albemarle just said almost all lithium sales will be for batteries by 2030, up from just 20% 10 years ago, saying that's transformative. North America accounted for 12% of lithium demand last year, and by 2030, Albemarle expects North America to comprise 20% of global demand. As we all know, in North America, it's the local battery material processing that's really been lagging, and they said the know-how to do that is sparse. It's actually a national security issue. When you really start to think about it, it does honestly become a little disheartening that our government is not praising Tesla for their lithium refinery, taking the risk and taking that initiative because it is so important to our future. On Monday, Elon is set to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister, but they're saying that these talks are going to be focused on artificial intelligence technology, no mention at all of Tesla. Although yes, of course, under that AI umbrella, Tesla does have a lot of operations, so we'll see what we get. In the 12 months through June of this year, Americans bought 977.4 thousand cars that run solely on electricity. It took 10 years for the United States to sell its first million fully electric vehicles, 2 years to reach the second million, and just over 1 year to reach the third. By the time the latest quarter's figures are tallied up over the next month, the country should be well on its way to a fourth. We're at about 7% in the United States now, and it might feel like a slog as we get to that 10 or 12%, but once we get there and some of these other companies have more EV offerings, I think things should get very exciting. Not that they're not already, but you know what I'm saying. Just another way to look at the data, this is a rolling view of 12-month United States sales, and you can see the impact that Tesla alone has. Back when they started exporting the Model 3, the trailing 12-month numbers actually dipped down, but that was the only time. And this is lost on 90% of the general public, but if it weren't for Tesla, these charts for the United States would look absolutely pathetic and brutal. You may recall over the summer, Tesla sent a track pack equipped Model S Plaid to the Nurburgring and ran a 7-minute 25-second lap, which was 9 seconds faster than the previous record from the Porsche Taycan. You better believe that wasn't going to sit well with Porsche, so as Sawyer said, the Porsche Taycan GT with a rumored 1,000 horsepower is testing at the Nurburgring. Elon chimed in saying it's a fun competition and it'll be fun for everybody else until the Roadster enters production. I guess at this point, if it enters production. All right, so here we have it. A new report from Reuters citing 5 different sources familiar with the matter. They say Tesla is closing in on an innovation that would allow it to die cast nearly all the complex underbody of an EV in one piece rather than about 400 parts in a conventional car. The know-how is core to Tesla's unboxed manufacturing strategy for the next-gen platform, a linchpin of Elon's plan to make tens of millions of cheaper EVs, and still make a profit. Tesla has said its unboxed model involves producing large sub-assemblies of a car at the same time and then snapping them together, but the size of these blocks is up for debate. The president of Caresoft Global, who we just heard from, said if Tesla managed to gigacast most of the underbody of an EV, it would further disrupt the way cars are designed and manufactured. He said, "It's an enabler on steroids. It has a huge implication for the industry, but it's a very challenging task. Castings are very hard to do, especially the bigger and the more complicated." 2 of these sources said Tesla's new design and manufacturing techniques meant Tesla could develop a car from the ground up in 18 to 24 months, while most rivals, it currently takes anywhere from 3 to 4 years. The 5 people said a single large frame combining the front and rear sections with the middle underbody where the battery is housed could be used in Tesla's small EV, which it aims to launch with a price tag of $25,000 by the middle of the decade. Tesla was expected to make a decision on whether to die-cast the platform in one piece as soon as this month. Though, even if they do, the end product could change during the design validation process. This breakthrough for Tesla centers on how the giant molds for such a large part are designed and tested for mass production, and how casts can incorporate hollow subframes with internal ribs to cut weight and boost crashworthiness. In both cases, the innovations developed by design and casting specialists in Britain, Germany, Japan, and the US involve 3D printing and industrial sand. Why sand? Well, for testing with metal, the machining tweaks during the design process could cost $100,000 a pop, or redoing the mold altogether might cost $1.5 million, which has been deemed prohibitive by most automakers because a design might need half a dozen tweaks or more to achieve a perfect die from the perspective of noise and vibration, fit and finish, ergonomics, and crashworthiness. And they said, but Elon's vision from the start was to find a way to cast the underbody in one piece. More on that in a second. To overcome these obstacles with metal prototypes, Tesla is turning to 3D printing and sand. Using a digital design file, printers known as binder jets deposit a liquid binding agent onto a thin layer of sand and gradually build a mold layer by layer that can die cast molten alloys. According to the source, the cost of the design validation process with sand casting, even with multiple versions, is minimal, around 3% of doing the same with a metal prototype. That means Tesla can tweak the prototypes as many times as they need to, reprinting a new one in a matter of hours. Using machines from companies like Desktop Metal and X1, remember this latter name. The design validation cycle using sand casting only takes 2 to 3 months, compared with anywhere from 6 months to a year for metal mold prototypes. Tesla plans to place solid sand cores printed by the binder jets within the overall mold. Once the part has been cast, the sand is removed to leave the voids. The aluminum alloys used to produce the castings behave differently in sand and metal molds and often failed to meet Tesla's criteria for crashworthiness and other attributes. But they've apparently overcome that challenge by formulating special alloys, sounds familiar, fine-tuning the molten alloy cooling process, and also coming up with an after-production heat treatment. And once Tesla is happy with a prototype mold, it can then invest in a final metal one for mass production. The sources said Tesla's upcoming small car has given it a perfect opportunity to cast an EV platform in one piece, mainly because its underbody is simpler. And this part does check out. They say the kind of small cars Tesla is developing, one for personal, the other for robotaxi, don't have a big overhang at the front and the back, and there's not as much of a hood or rear trunk. It's like a boat in a way, a battery tray with small wings attached to both ends. That would make sense to do in one piece. Tesla would of course still have to decide what type of gigapress to use for this if they go that route. And to punch out such large body parts fast, the people said Tesla would need new, bigger gigapresses with massive clamping power of 16,000 tons or more, which would come with a hefty price tag and might need larger factory buildings. 3 of the 5 sources said one problem with presses using high clamping power was they cannot house the 3D printed sand cores needed to make hollow subframes. The people said Tesla could solve these obstacles by using a different type of press into which molten alloy can be injected slowly. That process can produce higher quality castings and can accommodate the sand cores, but that process takes longer. As with most things, there are trade-offs, but Tesla could still choose high pressure for productivity, or they could choose slow alloy injection for quality and versatility. It's still a coin toss at this point. That was a lot, so I'm going to give you guys a break from listening to me. Here's a quick video of the process for this 3D printing with sand and these binder jets.
The binder jet 3D printing process consists of 3 main stages, that is, pre-processing, printing, and post-processing. Each stage plays a critical role in transforming loose powdered materials into solid functional objects. The pre-processing stage begins with preparing the powder. Using high-quality powders is essential for successful binder jet 3D printing. Powders with specific properties, such as particle size and distribution, are selected and prepared to ensure optimal printing results. Next, the build bed is prepared. The build bed is where the printing process takes place. A thin layer of powdered material is evenly spread across the build bed using a roller or similar mechanism. For accurate printing, it's crucial to achieve precise control and leveling. Once the build bed has been prepared, it's time for the printing stage to begin. The first step in this stage is the application of the binder. A specialized printing head moves across the build bed, depositing the binder onto the powdered material. The binder acts as a bonding agent that fuses the powdered materials together. With the binder applied, the layer-by-layer build process begins. The build bed moves down by a precise amount, and a new layer of powder is spread across the previously printed layer. The printing head then applies the binder to bond the new layer to the previous one. This layering process continues until the entire project is formed, with each layer binding to the previous one, thus gradually creating a solid 3D printed object. After an object is fully printed, it enters the post-processing stage, starting with debinding. Excess binder that is not essential for the structural integrity of the printed object is removed. This can be done through methods like heat or solvent treatment. And when the excess binder has been removed, we now remain with the 3D printed object. The final step in the post-processing stage is sintering. Sintering involves subjecting the printed object to high temperatures. This process helps to further bond the powder particles to increase the density and strength of the object. After the sintering process, we have a fully functional solid 3D printed object that is ready for use.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, Tesla can basically go through that process many times at a much cheaper cost. And once they have the final design, the gigacast that they would like, then they can go and actually turn that into a metal cast.
A lot of people have been saying that Tesla will cast an entire vehicle, and a 12,000-ton gigapress might be able to do that. However, The words cast an entire vehicle are terribly imprecise. It makes for a great headline, but what does it actually mean? We run into the same issue with Elon's comments at Giga Berlin. Elon said a full-body casting would be unwise, but we don't know what he means by full-body casting. It's pretty broad terminology.
And at Tesla's Investor Day, when they unveiled this new unboxed process, they did share this screen that had castings with front, rear, and other. With regard to Elon saying it would be unwise for a single cast, I'm not saying I think this is the case, but there's always a chance Elon's doing that 4D chess thing here, trying to throw the competition off the scent. So maybe all along Tesla really has been planning to get to this single casting for making vehicles, but Tesla didn't want anybody else to know so that they wouldn't try to do it themselves first. Because availability of these 16,000 ton gigapress machines will undoubtedly be very limited in the early days. And this is pure speculation on my part and Joe's, but as Joe said, that die shop that he really hasn't been able to explain at Giga Texas, well, maybe that has something to do with what's going on, but that's a huge maybe. Just keep in mind, Tesla has had plans in the past for certain designs like an exoskeleton for the Cybertruck, but when push came to shove, they ended up getting away from that a bit. With that being said, if there's any company on the planet that I'd be confident could figure this one out, I really do think it would be Tesla, given everything we know about their material science team, their ties with SpaceX, and their experience in developing these custom alloys already, not to mention their experience doing single piece gigacasts for front and rear. I like their chances. On LinkedIn, Rohan Ma from Tesla said Autobidder has grown its global portfolio to over 7 gigawatt hours of battery storage under direct dispatch next year, and their real-time algorithms have already returned over $330 million in trading profit to early storage investors. And Tesla Autobidder is hiring for machine learning engineers. To keep high-level tabs on the Indonesian market, Indonesia has asked Chinese car maker Geely to help it build a homegrown electric car by 2025 or 2026. Luhut Panjaitan said, I have offered Geely, do you want to make cars in Indonesia to be an Indonesian brand and do the research in Indonesia? And they said yes. Polestar 2 drivers can now watch either Prime Video or YouTube when their vehicle is charging. There's a new online petition from the Electric Vehicle Association calling for GM to promise to offer an affordable all-electric model, trying to get GM to keep the Chevy Equinox around $30,000. They said GM has failed to deliver on its early EV promises. They continuously push back production deadlines and favor high-priced luxury EVs over ones most families can afford. Not to justify GM's behaviors, but given the complexity and fluctuations of all the raw materials and building out a new supply chain for EVs, it would be pretty tough to figure out the exact price when you're announcing a year or two ahead. But the problem arises when the executives actually know there's no chance they can keep that price, but they put it out anyway for marketing purposes only to raise it later. GM's president, Mark Royce, believes their EVs will become profitable past 2025 thanks to Ultium. This is a cool initiative. We have Volvo Energy and Connected Energy teaming up to form a partnership to use Second Life batteries for battery energy storage. They'll use batteries from Volvo Group's electric buses, trucks, and machines. Development of their first prototype BESS may begin later this year, and Volvo Energy intends to launch the systems in the European market in early 2025. In the coming years, the volumes of returning batteries from First Life applications will substantially increase. Just another talking point for you when your friends tell you that electric car batteries go to the landfill. Tata Motors is now testing some of its electric vehicles for global markets, but they don't know which markets yet. They said more clarity should come next year. We have 66 electric taxis and 60 charging points will be equipped with EaseLink's conductive charging technology in the e-Taxi Austria project in Vienna and Graz. Don't forget, check out Surfshark, linked below. It's very affordable and honestly to me really does seem like a no-brainer. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X below. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.